As we approach the Passover for 2020 on the 8th of April, it is not only the Passover, but it's also along with the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is for 7 days, when the house is expected to be completely cleaned out, completely dusted out. Every cupboard, every corner of the house has to be searched for any leaven in the house, and it has to be completely removed out of the house. This has been a Jewish culture throughout their life, all the way from the journey from Egypt till today. However, leaven in the Bible is sin. And we need to understand that God is expecting His children to remove every form of sin from us as we get into celebrating Passover and the feast, which is on the first day of the unleavened bread. As there is a gathering, as we all come together in unity, and as we partake in the dinner, it is a time for us to examine our hearts, to understand that every leaven, every sin, anything that is displeasing God has to be removed before we get into this dinner table, which is the communion with God. So, what are the different types of leaven that we need to get rid of according to the words of Jesus? The first leaven that Jesus mentions is the leaven of the Pharisees. The Pharisees were people who who outwardly exhibited great religiosity. However, on the inside, they were contrary to what they were showing to the outside world. They had all forms of sin within their household and in their life, but to the outside world, they showed that they were holy. So, which is why Jesus said that do not be like the Pharisees who like to stand at the street corners and to lift their hands and pray, but rather you go in a room and you pray. So the Pharisees had a dual life which was hypocritical. They would show a different life to the people outside, but however, inside they had a different lifestyle. And Jesus greatly warned the people that to remove every form of leaven, such leaven of sin, of hypocrisy from our life. So this Passover, before we get into the Passover, let's examine our hearts for any kind of leaven of hypocrisy. The second hypocrisy that Jesus mentioned is the hypocrisy of the Sadducees. The Sadducees were people who again showed to the outside world that they were greatly religious. However, the Sadducees were very well equipped with the Word of God. They knew the Word of God. And what they were smart at is they said, Word of God has to be practical to our life, which is day to day. So they made a lot of liberation from the Word of God. In other words, they made compromises to the Word of God and gave themselves liberty to sin. So they were the liberals. Today, let's examine our hearts. Do we make excuses for the Word of God because we have some circumstances or situations? So if there is any leaven of Sadducee in our life, which is we make compromises of the Word of God by our own human reasoning, then it's time to get rid of such leaven from our lives. The third leaven that he mentioned is the leaven of Herod. Herod was the king of Judea, and Herod had married his brother's wife. And this was sin in the eyes of God. And John the Baptist rebuked Herod in public. And Herod had John arrested, and finally he had him beheaded. Herod's leaven is about power and self-indulgence. Whenever we Christians pursue power, or we think that using our power we can abuse or we can do things which is against the Word of God, then it is sin in the eyes of God. So today, let's get rid of every leaven of Herod, which is power-seeking, self-indulgence, but rather let us give ourselves, like how Christ has called us, to carry the cross and to please Him. May the Lord bless us with a wonderful season of Passover and unleavened bread, to know Him more deeper, and let the Lord sanctify us in the season and bless us with His mighty presence. God bless you all.